Let's see what scary books I read this year. One of my all-time favorites. Yeah, this one has a lot of puppets and dolls. I very much was uncomfortable. This book was a trip. Okay. It's creepy. It's creepy. Ooh, I'm already like, I'm getting goosebumps. This one grossed me out. Definitely gave me the EBGBs. Definitely gave me the EBGBs. Hello friend. Welcome back to a Very Bookish Vlogmas where I am diving into my 2023 Goodreads challenge. My goal was 50. I have surpassed that and I'm still reading. I'm diving into all of the books, all of the tropes, all of the lists, and my hopes for 2024 as well. If you haven't had a chance to see my book rating system, then please hop on over to the first video where I go over that. I have a timestamp so you can skip right to that and go over that if you care. If you don't care, then keep on watching. Yesterday, I went over my mystery and thriller reads. Today I am going over my horror genre reads, and I'm excited to dive in. So without further ado, let's see what scary books I read this year. The first one I am going to dive into is called What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. This is a Fall of the House of Usher retelling. It was very, very interesting. Let me give you a little synopsis. From the award-winning author of The Twisted Ones comes a gripping and atmospheric retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's classic The Fall of the House of Usher. When Alex Easton, a retired soldier, receives word that their childhood friend Madeline Usher is dying, they race to the ancestral home of the Ushers in the remote countryside of Ruravia. I probably said that wrong. What they find there is a nightmare of fungal growths and possessed wildlife surrounding a dark, pulsing lake. Madeline sleepwalks and speaks in strange voices at night, and her brother Roderick is consumed with a mysterious malady of the nerves. Aided by a redoubled British mycologist and a baffled American doctor, Alex must unravel the secret of the House of Usher before it consumes them all. Okay, so first of all, I am a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe. Honestly, I probably should have brushed up on my Edgar Allan Poe before I dove into this, but I did not realize it was a Fall of the House of Usher retelling. Definitely gave me the EBGBs. Definitely gave me the EBGBs. It was very short. It was a very quick read. The prose is very beautifully written, very short, succinct, to the point, but brilliant. I've never read anything by T. Kingfisher, but I can already tell I love the writing style and will most likely enjoy anything else written by this author. The cover alone is creepy and should be enough to make you feel uncomfortable. I very much was uncomfortable in this book multiple times, because there are creepy little rabbits that jump around, and it's not like the rabbits from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which attack and kill people, not that kind of rabbit, but they're just as creepy. Like, they are so creepy, and I do not like them for one instant. Anything with like fungus and mushrooms, ooh, I'm already like, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. Just creeps me out. It really creeps me out. And this has a lot about mushrooms. I learned a lot about mushrooms that I did not know about. Some really creepy, disgusting mushrooms. The characters were a lot of fun. The mycologist, is that what it? Yeah, the mycologist is super quirky, and I love her. I think she is my favorite character. Although the main character, Alex, is also really quirky, really fun, snarky in a very subtle way, which Kayla always loves. So What Moves the Dead? Very good, short read, simple, creepy, definitely will make like your skin crawl. That's one of these books. So if you're looking for kind of a creepy crawly book like that, definitely pick this one up. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars because it was perfectly succinct and exactly what I needed. The next book on the list that we are going to chat about is Ghost Eaters by Clay McLeod Chapman. Again, this is another author I had never heard anything about, but I'd seen this book everywhere. So I'll give you the synopsis. Erin hasn't been able to set a single boundary with her charismatic but reckless college ex-boyfriend Silas. When he asks her to bail him out of rehab, again, she knows she needs to cut him off. But days after he gets out, Silas turns out dead of an overdose in their hometown of Richmond, Virginia, and Erin's world falls apart. Then a friend tells her about Ghost, a new drug that allows users to see the dead. Want to get haunted, he asks. Grieving and desperate for closure with Silas, Erin agrees to a pill-popping seance. But the drug has unfathomable side effects, and once you take it, you can never go back. Got these 4 college friends. They've always been inseparable. Like we just read, Erin and Silas, they have a very strange relationship. It's a very toxic romantic relationship. Anyways, he ends up becoming very much addicted, in and out of rehab. She always bails him out. And the last time that she finally sets a boundary and says, no, I'm not, he actually ends up passing away. And the last 3 of the 4 gather together, and they kind of end up taking these drugs, this drug called Ghost, one last time, as kind of a ode to the past. And it just goes downhill from there because they get addicted, and it has some pretty bad side effects. Including seeing the dead. Yes, that's part of it, but it's also just, honestly, there were times that I was just really disgusted. I'm not gonna lie, just like, that's just gross. Not like gory, but just like gross. Like, ugh, I did not need to know the details. This book was a trip, which is perfect because what it describes is very, very accurate. Deals with addiction on a lot of different levels. It talks about toxic relationships and boundaries and how friendships fade and kind of fall apart. And I honestly didn't know how I felt about this book. There were parts of it that I really, really liked because it definitely creeped me out, and that's what I was going for. I wanted kind of a spooky, supernatural kind of book that I wanted to read during the Halloween season and kind of like autumn when the sky is getting dark earlier. I wanted something like that, and it definitely scratched that itch. This one grossed me out. This one grossed me out. I do like a good scary book. I don't like, this one also deals with mushrooms in a psychotropic way. So I read Ghost Eaters and then also What Moves the Dead right after another. And after these 2, I was definitely done with anything having to do with mushrooms and fungus. Ugh. So, I don't know. It was a good story. I didn't like the ending. It fit for what the book was, but I didn't really enjoy the ending. At the end, I just felt like this is kind of a gross trip of a book, and I don't ever want to read it again, to be honest. But it was well written. Yeah, I don't know how I felt about this one. I can't even remember what I rated this one. I think I gave this one a 3.5 to 4 stars because it was written well. I definitely wanted to keep reading. I definitely was interested in the story. I wanted to see where it went. Clay McLeod Chapman did a good job writing it. So 3.5 to 4 stars, somewhere in there, but won't be revisiting ever again. The next book that I read is one of my all-time favorites for this year, and it was How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix is quickly becoming potentially my favorite horror author. I love his style of writing. I love his pacing. There has not been a book that I've read of his that I have not given a 5-star. I've liked it all the way across the board. The only one that was uncomfortable, a little more uncomfortable for me, was the Vampire Slaving Club one. Did enjoy that one, but there were definitely times where I felt a little queasy to my stomach, I'm not gonna lie. But the story itself was absolutely phenomenal. And this one was hyped up, and I was honestly not disappointed. I really, really was not disappointed, but let me give you a little synopsis. When Louise finds out her parents have died, she dreads going home. She doesn't want to leave her daughter with her ex and fly to Charleston. She doesn't want to deal with her family home, stuffed to the rafters with remnants of her father's academic career and her mother's lifelong obsession with puppets and dolls. Yeah, this one has a lot of puppets and dolls. She doesn't want to learn how to live without the two people who knew and loved her best in the world. Most of all, she doesn't want to deal with her brother, Mark, who never left their hometown, gets fired from one job after another, and resents her success. Unfortunately, she'll need his help to get the house ready for sale because it'll take more than some new paint on the walls and clearing out a lifetime of memories to get this place on the market. But some houses don't want to be sold, and their home has other plans for the both of them. Okay. Louise and Mark are very much estranged. Louise has run away from her family. She really, really loves her daughter. It's basically just the two of them. Her ex is still kind of, I wouldn't say her ex like is still in love with her, but is kind of weirdly still attached in a strange way. Anyways, if you've read it, I think you'll understand what I mean on that. But she's very much separated from her family. She's kind of ran away, didn't want to have anything to do with that because, as we find out further in the book, though she was very close with her dad, or at least closer with her dad. Everybody's relationship in this book is pretty toxic. Like their family has some drama, and they do love each other. It's not that they don't love each other, but there's just a lot of drama that was never resolved. So her mom and dad pass away. She gets a call and needs to fly back and help take care of the house. Her and Mark, for maybe the first 25% of the book, are just at each other's throats, to the point where I was like, is this realistic? Now, I know it can be because death brings out the best and worst in people. So it's not that it was entirely unrealistic, but they were definitely at each other's throats. To the point where there were times I really hated both of them. I was like, oh my gosh. I also think that was the point. That is 100% what the point is. When it comes time to the reading of the will, the way the mom and dad set it up is just, there were basically two wills and they conflicted with each other. And the only way out of this is to go ahead and get the house sold. But as they start working on clearing out the house and getting the house sold, we find out that the house is very much indeed haunted. And there's a whole backstory with these dolls and puppets, specifically one specific puppet. So we are dealing with evil puppets and dolls. It's creepy. So the rest of the book, Mark and Louise are working on getting this house sold, and they have family members who are trying to help them out and kind of exorcise the house of these evil dolls and whatnot, and it gets pretty brutal. The book is split up into the 5 stages of grief, and I enjoyed how that it gave a very interesting flow to the book, and it was fun. It was different. It was something different that I wasn't expecting, and very much realistic to what goes on when you are grieving somebody. I really, really enjoyed Louise and Mark, and even though they really don't like each other at all, I think that their redemption narrative from beginning to end is absolutely beautiful. Yes, we are dealing with evil dolls, but by the end, they've worked through a lot of trauma. They've worked through a lot of toxic behavior from their parents, and recognizing it and being able to overcome it, being able to apologize to one another, being able to truly embrace one another. I loved that. There are few stories out there, I feel like, where you see this coming together of two people who have been at odds for a long time in a way that's deserved, right? A lot of times it's like you've got this kind of third act person who's never been a part of your life, or, you know, the dad or the mom who's never been a part of your life coming in at the third act saying, please, please, please. And the person who's been hurt this whole time is like, well, I guess I should, because, you know, that's the right thing to do. It's not like that. It's this wrestling, like this back and forth. It is not pretty. It takes time. And by the end, they get to this really beautiful resolution where they choose to work on their relationship and get closer as brother and sister. To me, this story was about their redemption. It was like their redemption story more than anything else. And I love that. And probably because I'm close with my brother and I love my brother, and sure, we get in fights sometimes, but for the most part, like, we are super tight and we nag each other like they do. So I just related to their relationship. That was probably the favorite part of this book for me. I felt creeped out, and again, it did that well, and that's what I was looking for. Definitely loved that. Loved the setting, very eerie, very much like, this house is creepy and I don't want to be a part of it. There are also a couple of very quirky characters that kind of get involved and try to help them figure out how to get rid of these like evil puppets and dolls. That I think her name is Carol. But just the goofiest human. And I thought she added so much to the story. Loved that. There were only a few things that I didn't like about this story. The main one being, there were just times that Luis was very controlling. I think I just react poorly to characters who are really, really controlling, because I don't enjoy being around people who are controlling. The one thing that was difficult for me was to grasp the concept of how cruel her mom was, specifically when it came to how her mom wrote the will. Her mom was very, very cruel to her, and I'm not sure we ever really got like the full reasoning why that was, but I did not like that. I'm not saying that there aren't times where there are mothers who aren't cruel. I think my mom is not cruel. So it was very hard to read that. That was very jarring. But other than that, those were kind of the only two things I didn't enjoy. Definitely gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. I pretty much have always given Grady Hendrix all of his books 5 out of 5 stars because I absolutely love them. But yeah, that was how to buy a haunted house. And finally, the last book that I'm going to be diving into was one of my favorite books this year, and it was called Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. I really, really, really enjoyed this book. This was another book that was recommended to me by Liv's Library. I ended up listening to this book through my Libby app. If you haven't gotten the Libby app, get it. I listened to it on the Libby app and I loved it so much that I bought it through Audible, and I will also be purchasing a copy for myself because I loved this book so much. So creepy and so unexpected. Very much unexpected. Let me read you the synopsis. 7 years ago, the Atargatis set off on a voyage to the Mariana Trench to film a mockumentary bringing to life ancient sea creatures of legend. It was lost at sea with all hands. Some have called it a hoax. Others have called it a maritime tragedy. Now, a new crew has been assembled, but this time they're not out to entertain. Some seek to validate their life's work. Some seek the greatest hunt of all. Some seek the truth. But for the ambitious young scientist Victoria Stewart, this is a voyage to uncover the fate of the sister she lost. So there's actually a first book, which I think is called Rolling in the Deep. I did not read that one. I did not realize that that's the story of the Atargatis. I dove into this one, which you can read these as standalones. But I definitely want to read Rolling into the Deep now that I've read this one. We have the Atargatis that went on, like you said, they went out to the Mariana Trench to film this mockumentary about all these sea creatures, and they end up completely disappearing and nobody has ever found them. So there's this scientific expedition that is funded by very, very rich billionaires to go out and figure out what happened, because they're pretty sure that there are evil mermaids involved based on some of the footage that came back. This story takes place at sea. We have a whole crew of people. We've got 2 hunters who are like psychotic, but I love them because they're so psychotic and weird. We have a couple of people who are there specifically to get interviews and film everything that's going on. And then we have a whole crew of scientists who are on this to gather all of this evidence and to ultimately figure out what the heck went on. Victoria is the main character for the most part, but I feel like there are a lot of main characters in this, which is why I enjoyed it. Every character was so dynamic, and for such a short story, I guess it's, how many? It's 448 pages, so I guess it's not a short story. But for a standalone book, there were a lot of characters that really carried a really heavy role. Victoria Stewart, her sister was originally on the Atargatis that disappeared. And so her goal to get on here is, I think she's going for marine biology. I might be wrong on that, but she's going to go for scientific reasons, but she's really going to figure out what happened to her sister. And basically they get out to sea and surprise, surprise, all hell breaks loose and they have to deal with killer mermaids. Except, I mean, I don't want to give it away, but it's not quite killer mermaids, but it's basically killer mermaids-ish. I don't want to give it away. So what did I love about this book? Very fast pace, very like nerve-wracking, because it's very quickly that everything starts falling apart. And by the end of it, I was wondering, are we gonna make it? Or is this gonna be one of those books where like nobody makes it? Like, I don't know. So it's fast paced. So even though it's 448 pages, mind you, I did listen to it. It didn't feel slow. I felt like the pacing was actually pretty quick and I was on my toes the whole time. I was nervous the whole time. I felt very strongly about all of the characters. Even the characters that we lose that are like trashy human beings, I felt strongly about it. I was like, that's right, you deserved it. It's not often that you feel strongly about almost every character in a book. And this one, I very much felt strongly about every character. I really was invested in what happened to them. It was a wild ride. I love anything set at sea. I love the ocean. I love deep sea exploration. And there were a lot of interesting things that I learned as well. Just some tidbits of knowledge and information that was dropped in there that I didn't know about before. And that was also kind of this bonus, like a whipped cream on top, you know, like the cherry on top of my ice cream sundae. So if you like scary books set at sea and that kind of claustrophobic feeling of we have nowhere to go and hopefully we survive, and also creatures of the deep and science and crazy hunter people who are a little psychotic but really funny, if you like any of those themes, this is definitely the book for you. I would highly suggest picking up this book. This is a 5 out of 5 for me. I will be purchasing this book. I will be listening to this book again. I will be annotating this book. I will be suggesting this book from now on until eternity because I absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite books ever. So that's my wrap up of all of my horror books from this year. Did you read any of these? Do you agree with me? What were your takes? Is this something you want to read? Have you heard of these? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, I will see you soon. Bye.